Thank you so much for joining us in Alton.
Well, I'm honored, and it's a great pleasure.
Well, and now, David, as we're talking about this, just to kind of get our audience familiarized with your background, take us through your career. You were the bodyguard for Pat Robertson, who, as most of us know, especially in around here, the Christian Broadcast Network, the televangelist.
Well, it starts back in Southern California, where I was a police officer in my hometown, Oceanside, California. I got married, and my wife at the time wanted to come back to CBN. She always wanted to be a reporter for the 700 Club TV show. And I said, great, let's do it. We moved back to Virginia Beach area, and we were both going to attend a grad school at what's now Regent University. It used to be called CBN University. So I enrolled in the master's program. And I was newlywed, and I wanted to take care of my wife. So I went over to student services, and I was going to apply for a job somewhere, maybe on campus, wherever. And a beautiful, wonderful lady named Nancy Keith looked at my resume. She said, "Oh, my goodness, you have police experience." I said, "Yeah, I'm retired, and I retired medically." And she said, "Well, do you know Pat Robertson?" I said, "Sure, I am not personally, but I've seen him on TV." She says, "Well, he's getting ready to run for president, and he's looking for bodyguards." And I said, "Well, my next question is, what does it pay, and when do I start?"
Right.
So I was sent over to interview with a gentleman who's now my best friend in the world. He was best man at my wedding a few years ago. Jim Small was the head of the department. We sat down and talked. We bonded immediately, and next thing I know, I'm walking around with Pat Robertson, flying out with him on weekends. I'd go to grad school in the evenings at Regent, and then it was a very dysfunctional life. Friday evening, I'd fly out to parts unknown with Pat Robertson, spend the weekend going around doing pseudo political events. He wasn't an official candidate yet. He was under a political action committee called Americans for Robertson. And I'd be his bodyguard. I'd drive him from event to event and fly back in on Sunday night, make sure he was safe in his house. And then I'd go back to being a student for a few hours.
Wow.
That's it.
How do you, and just because I'm so fascinated by that aspect alone before we dive into to the books, is, as a student, how do you manage that, mentally when you're going back to being a student and also as a bodyguard for one of the most notable figures really at that time throughout the world?
Yeah, Pat was a real lightning rod back in those days. He was really, really controversial. And grad school, I didn't find that hard. I studied communications. I had my bachelor's in communication, and I had 3 other college degrees coming into grad school. So I'm a perennial student. And the hard part was getting used to Pat's idiosyncratic ways.
Gotcha.
I usually tell people Pat wanted it 3 ways: good, fast, and cheap. And so that's what we tried to do. It was really quite a lifestyle. I left security for a brief period of time to finish my graduate project, came back, and I had actually started an animation studio at CBN. That's what my degree was in, was animation. Wow. And I wrote a proposal for CBN. I said, look, you've got all the makings of a facility that can produce animation for children, except for the studio. So here's my proposal. I think I could do this for you and set this thing up, and we could start generating cartoons that would entertain and educate kids about Jesus. And a few weeks later, they said, your money has been approved. How soon can you get here? So I came back out from California, where I was doing my master's project, and I set up the studio. Fast forward, we had been producing animation, and I got another phone call from Pat's office. And it was Barbara Johnson, his fantastic administrator. And she said, Pat wants to see you. Well, that's like Jesus himself saying, please come be with me.
Yeah.
So you don't say no to that. So I went over there. I walked in. He came out of his office. He said, David, brother, he says, Jim Small has just resigned from security. I need you to take, and he says, Jim says, there's only one person that can keep me alive in this organization, and that's you. He said, will you take over the security department?
Wow.
Until we can find a proper replacement. I said, Pat, I've never denied you anything. And I should have been smart and taken him into his office and said, listen, if I'm going to run animation and security, I need a little bit more money because ministries are notoriously poor payers of their people.
Right.
I didn't. I went back. So I strapped on a 9mm gun. I was producing animation down the hall. And then when Pat needed me, I was taking him around, flying out all over the world. So it was really a dysfunctional lifestyle.
I'd say so. And leads me to my next point is, when did you realize you were witnessing things that most would probably never believe about this whole entity and Pat Robertson?
It was really a bizarre world I lived in because fortunately, we had a great core group of executive protection officers. And what they would do, for example, I'll tell you one of the most difficult trips we had was in advance of the Michigan primary when Pat was getting ready to run. We had to cover 7 cities in Michigan with 3 guys within one 24-hour period.
Wow.
Covered about 20 events, and it was a logistics nightmare. Now, these are the days before GPS. The only thing you had to find your way around were these big atlas maps when you go, well, my destination is at G7 and I'm at G3. How do I get there? So we would bring Pat into these events. We fortunately, the guys would go out a few days ahead of us if it was a prolonged visit. Mm-hmm. And they would do advances for us. They would say, find out, how do I get from event 1 to event 2? Where's the nearest hospital in case, God forbid, he gets hurt? And go. I need to go inside and check out the logistics. So when David and Pat get here, I can walk them up to the stage or wherever the meeting is. Yeah. So they did a fantastic job. I can't speak highly enough about these guys. They were outstanding. The stress cost 2 of them their marriages.
I bet.
But it was, it was a victim of the circumstances. But yeah, it was weird. And then we'd go overseas. One trip we went over to Zaire. Well, I can't carry a gun in Zaire.
Oh.
So I was nervous as can be because I'm like, man, if anything happens, I always joke about the fact that Pat wanted me to be his bodyguard because I'm 6'5", and Pat at the time was about 6'3.5". So I figured he could just duck down behind me and I'd take all the bullets. Anyway, that was pretty much my life for several years.
Well, and now this is what leads me into the next point of this, and your writings here is, the public at the time sees him as as Pat Robertson on TV and a polished figure, and at least a notable one, whether or not you agreed with him or not, he had a presence. What was the public versus private side of Pat Robertson like? Did it change? Did his character change once the camera turned off?
The book I wrote, called Protecting Pat Robertson, Confessions of a High-Priced Bagman. The bagman part's a whole different story and kind of reflects your question. But anyway, I was in grad school and I would walk in and talk to my advisor, a great guy, Terry Linval. We looked like the odd couple. I think Terry's about 5'6", but he was an incredible instructor. And I need a little break. I had come in from a trip, and so I go into Terry's office. I said, "Well, you're not going to guess what happened. You're not going to believe what happened this time." What? Tell me about it. I tell him some funny stories or whatever about what happened. He says, "God, Dave," he says, "you got to write a book. You got to write a book about these funny anecdotes. People just won't believe it." I said, "Okay, well, I'll give it some thought." Well, I was with Pat, and the book itself I call a transitional book. It starts off very innocuous, talks about a lot of funny things happened with Pat, um, on campus and out at various events. Some of them are just hilarious. Some of them are kind of serious. We had a couple of gay guys try and smear him with blood in San Francisco.
Wow.
I mean, that was one of the serious ones. But anyway, what happened, CJ, was Pat decided to run for president.
Okay.
And I think most of your viewers will agree that politics is a dirty business. And I was in the car with Pat one time, and I was sitting in the shotgun seat. He was in back with two guys from one guy from CBN, Rob Hartley. He was the vice president of development, kind of the money man for CBN. The other guy was Pat's campaign manager at the time, a guy named Mark Nuttall, who, between you and me, I wouldn't give a warm bucket of spit for.
Yeah, that's how most of them seem to be.
But they were having this discussion, and Nuttall was saying, "Pat, you got to give us your campaign access to this 3.5 million names on the CBN donor list.
Oh no,
we're running out of money. We got to hit them up for money." Rob Hartley would go, "Pat, you can't do that. It's illegal to lose your tax exempt status. It'll ruin the ministry." And it was like those old time movies where the hero of the story had an angel and a devil on his shoulder, and they were just trying to get him onto their side. And this went on for about 20 minutes. And I was sitting up front thinking, if he makes the wrong decision here, we're ruined. And after about 20 minutes, there was this 2-minute silence. And then I heard Pat say to Rob Hartley, "Give him the list." And it felt like I got a gut punch. And I thought, we have just sold our birthright. And fast forward, that one decision cost over about 620 employees their jobs at CBN.
Wow.
Money dropped off by about 40%. And Rob Hartley told him what was going to happen. He said, "Pat, you got people that don't want you to run for president because they're firm believers in politics and religion shouldn't mix. The other group is going to, they're your donor faithful for CBN. They're going to start getting cards from Americans for Robertson, hitting them up for money. So they're going to say, well, screw this. I'm not going to give to this guy.
Right.
I'm going to give to his presidential campaign. I want to see him in the White House, turn this nation into Christians." And the other ones are going to be the other opposite end of the poll. They're going to say, well, I've only got $20 to give to one or the other, so I guess I'll give it to Pat and see what he does with it.
Right.
So that was like ripping the bottom out of the money bag. It just drained. And my friend Jim Small, he had the awesome, horrible duty. Pat got back after the campaign. He knew he wasn't going to be president. He spent about a week walking around the property and stopping employees and would say, "What's your name? What is your department? What do you do? And who do you report to?" And they'd tell him, "I'm John Smith. I work in telemarketing, whatever." And he'd make notes. He'd take these notes at the end of the day, give them to Barbara Johnson. She'd type them up, and the list would be given to Jim Small the next day, and he was the hit man. He'd go around and tell each vice president that was over these people, "They're done.
Wow.
Lay them off." And I jokingly say that when Pat walked down the hall, the vice presidents would put blood over the doorposts of their offices hoping the angel of Pat would pass over, because it was just like a death march. If he came down the hall, and he wore these cowboy boots all the time, and you hear this clump, 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 clump coming down the hall, and people are like, oh man, I'm gonna have to lay some people off.
Wow.
Because that's what politics did.
Yeah.
But the second half of the book is all the transitional stuff. What Pat did illegally.
Yep.
What what else I have in there? Oh, and then when he came back, CJ, I know I'm bloviating a lot, but there's a lot to tell.
Great.
He came back and realized, gosh, I was gone for like 3-4 months, and it decimated the ministry. What's going to happen when I die?
Yeah.
I don't want to lose this 30-year enterprise that I built from scratch. So he panicked. He started looking, instead of looking to God, he started looking to sources that were quick money, long-term, what do they call it? Marketing, pyramid marketing.
Oh, pyramid schemes and all.
Well, it was supposed to be a marketing program where
Gotcha.
Christians were going to be able to sell, what do they call it? Like Amway, the Amway structure.
Gotcha.
Can't think of the name right now. But he started chasing that. Here's the thing that just sent me over the edge. Here you got Pat Robertson, one of the greatest spokespersons for God that ever walked the planet in our generation. And he's buddying up with a guy named Mobutu Sese Seko, who was a brutal dictator in Zaire, to mine gold and diamonds for a private company that Pat owned. And then he did the same thing with a guy named Charles Taylor, who was the president of Liberia. And Taylor was tried and convicted by the World Court in The Hague for crimes against humanity. He butchered thousands of his own citizens to maintain control. Wow. So now we got Pat in business in cahoots secretly with these two guys. I'm like, this is wrong. This is not the Pat Robertson I started working for. So I've taken a lot of criticism because people haven't read the book, but they've been quick to condemn me. How dare you do this to Brother Pat? You're a Judas. Every book you sell, I hope you enjoy your blood money. And I'm like, you obviously haven't read the book. I was ready to take a bullet for Pat.
Yeah.
I loved him. I did everything he asked me to do, but this just put me over the edge, and I ended up leaving and went to the private sector and did very well. But
I just think this is why I find it so fascinating, because I did have a chance to read through a little bit, and it's not written as a hit piece. I mean, the way that you wrote it, you really did tell kind of your story in a way that's not a bashing thing. It just tells the story about how after that political campaign, it just seems like the mindset shifted. And I wanted to ask you a little bit more, if it's okay, about this, because this partnership with African dictators for this gold and these diamond ventures are just baffling to me. How does he get into contact with them? Is it just because he's Pat Robertson and says, let's go, we heard about this, let's go invest, or do they reach out to him?
This is vodka, by the way.
Like, okay.
Mobutu came about. Mobutu was going through a public opinion crisis. Mm-hmm. He had done so many horrible things. He was looking for a man of great stature who was somewhat religious that he could pony up with, and I guess guilt by association. Mm-hmm. And somebody's at my door. Never mind. So Mobutu had written a bunch of letters to a bunch of televangelists across the country, and most of them saw right through the scam. They just said, no, I'm not doing anything with this guy. He's dangerous and dirty. Well, Pat bought into it. And we flew over to Zaire with a little contingent of CBN people, and we met. It was very surreal. We were picked up by a couple of guys in black suits. Kinshasa, Zaire is where we stayed. It was in chaos. 50% of the people were unemployed. Inflation was off the scale. It was just, and guys were standing around street corners with M16s.
Whoa.
It was dangerous. I had no weapon. So anyway, we were at the mercy of Mobutu. Pat went in with an idea that he wanted to take over the copper mining in Zaire. Zaire at the time, I haven't stayed on top of it, it was a wealthy, wealthy nation as far as natural resources.
Okay.
It had 3 growing seasons a year. They grew every kind of fruit and vegetable. They were rich in mining operations, hardwoods, everything, but they just didn't have the infrastructure to get it to market. So Pat went over there to try to take over their copper mining. And he actually signed a handwritten contract he drafted with Mobutu. And we sat out on a porch one night drinking iced tea. He says, "Do you believe this, brother?" He says, I control all the copper mining in this country right now. What do you think I should do? I said, buy low and sell high.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, good advice.
That's not rocket science. Anyway, it translated over, and Pat decided, well, I'm going to see if I can get some diamonds out of this deal and some gold.
Yeah.
So, anyway, somebody's banging on my door.
Do you want to take a quick break and we can come back and continue the conversation?
Yeah, can I take 30 seconds?
No, let's do this. Let's take a couple-minute break. We'll come back around 10:55 and we'll continue this. We'll come back with more Daily Show right after this on Riverbender.
Throughout all life stages, you need someone in your corner, guiding you on your health and wellness journey. At OSF Healthcare, that's your primary care provider. Your OSF primary care provider is there for every stage of life. Find a provider today at osfhealthcare.org/primary.
With over 20 years of experience, Wilson's Tree Service has the expertise to handle all of your tree care needs. Licensed and fully insured, their team of experts are dedicated to providing reliable service. Plus, with a 24-hour emergency service line, Wilson's will always be there for you. Don't risk tackling that timber by yourself. Trust the local professionals at Wilson's Tree Service. Visit treeservicealtonil.org to get started today.
Discover Del Mar Public House, located in Godfrey's historic Clifton Schoolhouse. Enjoy bold flavors like homemade falafel, fish and chips, and rotating pasta favorites. Relax with local beers, half-price wine bottles, and summer poutine nights. The only thing missing is you. Open Wednesday through Sunday. Del Mar Public House, where great food, drinks, and friends come together. DelMarPublicHouse.com.
Do you need to declutter your space? Time to call me, the Queen of Junk. Since 1993, we have grown to be the leader in residential, commercial, and property management junk removal. At Sparks Junk Removal, we are eco-friendly. We recycle, donate, or repurpose items back into our community. Trash is our last resort to the landfill. Plus, with our all-inclusive service, our crews handle everything from labor to lifting and landfill fees. Give us a call or visit our website, sparksjunkremoval.net, to reclaim your space today.
When I got in the car accident at the ER, they gave me a prescription of hydrocodone. And over time, it took more medication to mask the pain. I moved over to drug seeking and found heroin and fentanyl. I went to the Centerstone rehab facility, and it was the best decision I ever made in my life. I have my own car. I have a job. There's nothing holding me back anymore.
When you need a project done right, on budget and on time, trust Gillahan Concrete. Gillahan handles every kind of project, big and small. Commercial, industrial, residential, from room additions and garages to patios, driveways, and more. Gillahan brings quality and experience to every job. Family owned with over 30 years of service to our community. Call today at 618-781-3914 or visit GillahanConcrete.com.
Accidents happen in a heartbeat, but lives change forever. Whether it's a car crash, workplace injury, medical malpractice, or wrongful death, you don't have to face the consequences alone. Keith Short and Associates brings over 33 years of experience and a reputation for fighting fiercely for your rights. For relentless representation that you can trust, call Keith Short and Associates at 618-254-0055 today for a free consultation.
You're listening to Our Daily Show with CJ Nasello on RiverBender.com.
The head did it. The boys in the newsroom got around it.
Right on back. 10:57, back with David Wilcox. Really excited to continue this conversation. And David, thanks for hanging around. I would love to chat for a couple of more minutes on this. And
Absolutely.
It leads me into my next point. We were kind of wrapping up before we took a break about a little bit of the copper mining, and we were leading into the diamonds and the gold. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about was there money that was used for Rwandan refugees that was for some of these ventures?
Oh, yeah, this'll really drop your jaw. Pat always had a heart for people in third world countries. He did a lot of work for them through the ministry, and he got word that there was a massacre going on in Rwanda, and almost 1 million people fled that country and sought safety in Zaire. And unfortunately, a cholera outbreak developed in that camp where all these 1 million people were living out in these dirt fields. And Pat had earlier had created this thing called the Flying Hospital. That too was kind of a fiasco. He bought a L-1011 jet, stripped it out, built a high-tech surgical unit, and doctors were flown, in theory, going to be flown all over the world. Well, he hadn't done his homework, and that plane can't land in about 70% of the airports in the world. So it was kind of sitting around in the junkyard. But what he went on TV at the 700 Club, and he told people there is a outbreak of cholera. These poor people are dying out in these fields in Zaire. What I want to do, I'm going to get 100 doctors together. I'm going to get drugs to treat them, and and you're going to help because you're going to send me the money for this, and we're going to go over there and save lives. This is hard. What he did was he pled to their senses, and money really started rolling in. Well, what really happened was, and there's a movie out there, you can look it up on YouTube, called Mission Congo, exposes a lot of this. Pat simultaneously was mining diamonds in Zaire.
Wow.
And he bought 3 Vietnam-era planes that were capable of hauling cargo, and they were supposed to be able to fly in and take all these humanitarian tools, the medicine, all this stuff, to the refugees. What was happening was Pat was really sending boxes and boxes and boxes of aspirin.
Wow.
Well, you don't treat cholera with aspirin,
Right.
number one. And here's the hard part. He was spending most of the airplane time using it to haul dredging material and supplies for his diamond mining company.
Wow.
And it was just, in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, but it was out and out fraud. And
Yeah.
they raised a lot of money, and Pat was using it to finance this company that he had set up. And he was the sole owner of this diamond mining operation.
Well,
and it's just sad.
Yeah.
The people that were legitimate over there, they said, well, CBN didn't do much over here. They sent a handful of people, and they were just running around throwing Bibles at everybody. They weren't any doctors per se, and these people were just dying.
That's crazy. I mean, it's just awful and sad and crazy all the same time. And David, we're running out of time here on the show today. I would love to have you back on because I would love to talk to you about your book, your second book as well, about Ralph Reed and the Christian Coalition a little bit if we have time in the next couple of months. One final question.
Absolutely.
What do you hope the readers and the listeners, the readers of your book, listeners of today's show, take away from our conversation and from your piece on Pat Robertson?
Well, if you're a Christian, don't put your faith in men.
Yeah.
Guy may look good in a $1,000 suit and thump his Bible and tell you, don't do pornography. Well, they're probably just as big of an offender as you are. Put your faith in God. Talk to God. He doesn't yell at you. He talks in a still, small voice. Okay. Don't put your faith in brick and mortar establishments. Things that are made by man, for man. Have an intimate relationship with God. People say, you lost your faith. You've been ripping Pat Robertson a new one. No, on the contrary, my faith has grown stronger. I don't rely on guys like Pat.
Yeah.
They're all fallible. Okay, but trust in the Lord. Be patient when you ask for things. And that's pretty much what I want people to take out of the book.
Well, David, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking with you, and let's talk again soon.
Absolutely.
Well, out of time today, and we're going to send you all into the weekend. Have a good one. Enjoy the 80s mixer, the Alton Expo. There's so much. But most importantly, try your best, as always, to stay out of jail.
To the